Hello and welcome to NPC. That stands for Next Portable Console. It's the show about the games we take with us. My name, as always and forever, unless I change everything about myself, is Brendon Bigley. I'm here with John Voorhees.
Hey, I'm not changing my name, but I'm intrigued by the idea of you changing your name.
Yeah. What if I just got rid of my middle name and then I was just Brendon Bigley? And then I could introduce myself as just Brendon Bigley. Anyway, I'm also here with Federico Viticci.
I'm changing my name to Tamadatchi Viticci. So that's what I'm doing. So, yeah.
Nice.
Tamadatchi Viticci. You should be Tamagotchi Tamadatchi Viticci.
Tamagotchi.
Oh boy, that's a mouthful.
Yeah. Yeah. For reasons that we'll talk about in a bit.
Yes, we literally just hit record like right after the Nintendo Direct wrapped up. It's the March 27th Nintendo Direct, to be clear, because I know this is coming out the week after. But we're going to talk about some stuff there. I mean, a lot of the stuff, at least for you, dear listener, will be old news by the time we're talking about it. But I do think there are some like hardware and software specific things related to the Nintendo Switch reveal, which will be happening this week, the week that this episode comes out, that I think are kind of touched on here and there. But we have a bunch of other news to talk about. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about. Federico, where should we start today?
I think
where do you want to kick it off?
I think I just want to start with some news items. As an appetizer to ease our listeners
Yes,
and
Amuse
viewers.
Bouche.
Yes, an Amuse Bouche of just a bit of a recap. EmuDeck 2.4 has been released. So this is the sort of the all-in-one software tool to install a whole bunch of emulators on a Steam Deck, which I have used in the past, and it's always been very intuitive to use. Now it's got an even better installation flow. So it sort of guides you, like, do you want to use Emulation Station, or do you want to use like these other slightly more complex setup for all your ROMs, all of the things that you store on a Steam Deck. So there's a new installation flow, and there is better support for two new types of emulators. So there's one for the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch emulators are still happening, sort of in these hidden corners of the web. There is a new one called Citron. I don't know why they keep choosing these fruit names. I honestly have no idea. What is it?
Yes.
With lime, yuzu.
I don't know. We've got limes and we've got everything. We got oranges.
We got a whole bunch of fruit going on. But
Citron.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Citron doesn't come pre-installed, but EmuDeck will automatically detect if you have Citron on your Steam Deck, and if it finds the directory, will make it look nice. There's also support for the new Nintendo 3DS emulator that we mentioned before, Azahar. Now, Azahar, I believe it's a flower. Now, this is not a fruit. It's a Spanish name for a flower. We will be revisiting Azahar at some point because they're doing some interesting things with dual screen setups that I want to play around with. Now, this one is officially supported. And for those who missed it before, Azahar is sort of the combination of two previous Citra forks. The Lime 3D, it combines Lime 3DS and the Pablo MK7 Citra fork. So it's a brand new emulator, new development team. They're doing some interesting things. Now support for Azahar is baked into EmuDeck 2.4, which I highly recommend. I think it's the easiest way to get started with EmuDeck on a Steam, like with emulation on a Steam Deck. You just download it, run it, it does everything for you. It's very nice.
I've been waiting to get EmuDeck on my Ally X specifically because I was waiting for this release to happen. So I'm excited this weekend to have something to do, something to tinker away on.
Nice. I wanted to talk about our friends at NEO. Because NEO is at it again. So if you recall, last year they announced they had a bit of a period last year when NEO sort of got into this retro-looking computers and consoles. They did a retro-looking sort of cyberpunk-ish like eGPU for whatever reason. They also announced a mini computer, like a mini PC that almost looked like a tiny Macintosh of sorts, like a computer from the late 70s, 80s.
Didn't they do a weird looking power bank at one point too as part of this whole thing?
I'm sure they also
I think they did.
I'm sure they did.
They looked like a spaceship or something.
Yeah, there was also the eGPU that looked like a spaceship.
Oh, yeah, maybe I'm mixing the two up. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the power. The power bank looked just like a Super Nintendo.
Oh, that's what it was. That's what it was. Right.
All right.
So weird.
So anyway, last year, they announced this AM01S, which was supposed to be this mini PC without a screen, inspired by the computers of the 80s. Now, This mini PC was never launched, but NEO announced a few days ago that they are sort of reintroducing this mini PC, the AM01S, with better specs than before. So they are upgrading.
I would hope so. It's been a year.
It's been a year. They're upgrading from the Hawk Point to the Strix Point AMD system on a chip, and it now comes with a 4-inch flip-up display. So it comes with it almost looks like there's a mini PC and basically like a phone sort of sitting above it. It's a native horizontal display that ANEO is sort of selling, advertising as a secondary mini display. So the idea being you can put this retro-looking mini PC on your desk. You're going to connect your main monitor, but you're also going to have a built-in native flip-up display on this thing.
Sure. Why not?
Why not?
Right? I mean, maybe for your chat make it your chat window. I don't know. I think the whole idea with this mini PC was that this would be something you hook up to your TV and play, run emulators on and play your older games. But with a little screen like that, I guess maybe they've decided it's more of a desktop thing, because I think a 4-inch screen, if you're sitting on the couch, isn't going to do you any good. It's got to be something a little closer to you than that.
Yeah. I'm just so interested in, like, I mean, it feels like Anbernick last year. Like, ANEO has announced at least one device a week for the past however many weeks. Like, they are single-handedly sustaining NPC going weekly as a podcast. But I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with some of these pictures because it really just looks like you hot glued an iPhone to the top of a Mac Studio.
Yeah,
which is kind of funny.
My main question is, does it swivel? I think so, right? Because they're showing like it can lay flat.
Yeah, and then it it articulates.
Flip it up.
Yeah.
What an interesting combo. Also because like the entire body of the mini PC is very much retro looking. But then you have this thing that looks like a modern phone.
Yes. Yeah, it is weird. It is a weird like hybrid of modern and old school design. I think when I said it looks like a Mac Studio, it looks like if Apple made the Mac Studio in the same year that they made like the Lisa 2. Like it looks like
it looks like a 90s Mac Studio.
Yeah, it's super weird.
But
hey, I mean, that's a good chip, but also like no pricing, no release date.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what happened last time they announced it too. So
it's vaporware until it's for sale.
I agree. I totally agree.
It's the Apple intelligence of mini PCs. That's what it is.
But if you're at ANEO and you're listening, I will try one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. We will try anything, ANEO. We will try anything. I need to mention next this weird and cool looking foldable by the folks at Huawei. So I have expressed my interest in foldables before. Brendon and I, we've talked about our love for the Surface 2 Duo 2, which is not exactly a foldable. Like that was a foldable before foldables were a thing, which was Microsoft basically doing like a book style thing with two physically separate displays. But Brendon mentioned you tried the original Pixel Fold before.
Yeah.
I have tried a whole bunch of foldables over the years. This new one by Huawei is very interesting because it's weirdly wide. So this is a foldable in the style of a Samsung Z Fold, but it sort of takes the opposite approach in that when it's closed like a book, it's short and wide. So it's basically square looking. When you're holding it in your hand and it's closed, you got the outer display, which has a bit of a square aspect ratio. You get the camera bar with a whole bunch of cameras. So you can hold this thing when it's closed in the palm of your hand and it's square. And you got the cameras looking at you and you can interact with what are they calling their Android fork? Harmony OS, I think it's what Huawei does. When you open it up, and so if you open it up like this, book style, you end up with basically a horizontal device. And if you flip it vertically, it looks like a shrunk iPad mini. It's a very odd and novel form factor for a foldable. Very different from what you may have seen, say, from a Samsung Z Fold or the new generation Pixel Fold. It almost looks like, what if the Samsung Z Flip and the Z Fold were the same device? That's sort of what Huawei is going for. But looking at the pictures of this foldable open in vertical orientation, this device to me screams a Nintendo DS emulation. Because
Yeah.
you got that aspect ratio that I think, judging just from the product photos, and I also saw a video of someone holding the device in portrait open. It looks very comfortable. It looks like a wider phone, and you can just use it with one hand like that, like a really small iPad Mini, basically in portrait. But that to me feels ideal for DS emulation. Obviously. Too bad, because Huawei, you guys in America will never get Huawei devices.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not going to be sold in the U.S.
No, because of cyber security, whatever. This is called
Yeah.
the Pura X. That's the name of this handheld. I think obviously with NPC we're gonna be keeping an eye on what Chinese phone manufacturers are working on, because there are tons of interesting ideas coming out of China. Some of these ideas, I think there's an interesting dynamic in which these companies, obviously being based in China, they have access to all the latest innovations, all the latest materials. And you do see a lot of these companies obviously throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. I mean, you see it in phones, you see it in headphones, you see it in gaming devices. But then you have the companies like Google and Apple sort of coming in, taking those technologies, taking those materials and refining those ideas. So I think it'll be very interesting to see, for example, what Apple does next year with the foldable, right? With the foldable iPhone. If they can take some of these innovations that these companies have created, like I recall a few weeks ago, we saw that really thin foldable by Oppo. I think the Oppo N5. That's like it's a new generation of foldable phones that is super thin because it's using this new battery technology, and we're starting to see this new super dense, like high density battery technology find its way to other accessories. Like, for example, next week, I will be talking about this on the show. I have coming this OnePlus super thin portable battery that you can
So do I.
Oh, nice.
I saw your link. I was like, oh, I'm getting
Brendon,
this. This looks amazing.
I don't know if you know this, Brendon. So OnePlus, they made this very thin battery that you can attach to the back of your iPhone or any other Android phone. And it's like, imagine the Apple MagSafe wallet, but it's a battery.
Yeah.
Like it's about that thickness, and it's a 5,000 milliampere hour battery. So this is
wild.
Yeah. So this is this new high density battery technology that you start seeing it in these high end devices, and then it trickles down to accessories, and then potentially it's gonna come to the foldable iPhone next year. And I have to guess that eventually we're gonna see that once the prices come down, in handhelds, right? So these high-density batteries that allow for lighter, thinner, and devices that also last longer. So yeah.
To put that battery in perspective, Apple made one, a few years ago. This is almost 3.5 times the energy in this little battery, and it is just under. I think it's like 0.8 centimeters or something like that, whereas Apple's was like 0.95 or something like that. So it's thinner, and it's got like 3.5 times the battery capacity.
Yeah. It looks like one of those devices. I'm looking at some pictures right now. It looks like one of those devices that is limited more by the size of standard USB-C plugs than it is by anything else, which is amazing that we're at that point already. Yeah. John just downloaded the Nintendo Today app, which I also just downloaded while we were talking.
We're coming soon. It's in the Discord, Federico.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that while Brendon introduces the next item
in real time.
Brendon, can you tell us, before we talk about the Nintendo Direct, can you tell us about this rumor for the 3-phase launch plan for the Nintendo Switch 2? Because I have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, I'm really confused by it. All right, so this started out with a piece from Tom Henderson over at Insider Gaming. Tom Henderson, great track record, good at his job. Basically wrote this post that was talking about Nintendo's plan to have a 3-phase launch strategy for the Nintendo Switch 2, which starts with it launching in June, which I can corroborate based on my sources. I've also heard June, so I think June is pretty much set. Although I did see some retailer in Spain said that it's going to launch in May.
Yeah, I saw May 9. I saw that rumor, yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing June. Tom Henderson's hearing June. And then also, just to throw in another news item real quick, Best Buy announced this morning that they will start taking pre-orders on April 2nd for June. So it's Best Buy Canada, to be specific. So it seems like June is going to happen. But anyway, launch in June, and it's going to launch with a bunch of first-party titles. Simultaneously with launch or around launch in June, Nintendo will also be sending out dev kits to third-party developers. And towards the end of Q3, beginning of Q4, is when Nintendo is hoping to coast on the release of third-party games before we get into, I would say, 2026, where we start to see more first-party games rolling out. So this does feel like it falls into a little bit of what we've heard, at least from like Bloomberg reporting and like more verifiable sources, where Nintendo has kind of like scaled back, or at least they held back on what they were planning on doing with the Switch last year, or the Switch 2 specifically last year, to both increase hardware to make sure that they had enough supply to meet demand, and simultaneously made sure that they had enough software to support the Switch 2 at launch. So you don't run into like a Wii U problem where you have like 5 ports of AAA games that came out 2 years ago and 1 Mario Kart, and that's it. It feels like Nintendo has kind of been sitting back, making sure that their launch title strategy is like in a good place. The thing that confuses me specifically is the idea of sending dev kits out in June, which feels John, you brought this up when we were talking about it in our Discord, but like it feels too soon to be sending out dev kits if you want those games to be supporting the console in October and November. I do think there are a couple different avenues here. Number one is that like I don't think it'd be surprising for anyone to hear that like there are third-party developers with dev kits for the Switch 2 already. They're like the open secret, as far as we know from GDC and also from CES, is that a lot of people also know what the specs of the Switch 2 will be. So they're probably building games to that spec, and then getting a dev kit in hand will literally just be like a quality check more than it will be like we're developing this thing starting now. So it's not like these people are going to be caught completely unawares when the Switch 2 dev kit shows up. So there are a lot of games already in development. The larger thing for me, I think, is like I just don't see a world in which Nintendo relies solely on third-party developers like post Q2 of next year, going into the holiday season. And I think one of the big tentpole reasons for that just got revealed in the Nintendo Direct today, which is that Nintendo is going to continue supporting the Nintendo Switch 1 well into next year. Like they announced a bunch of games that are coming out throughout 2025. They announced at least 2, to my memory, games that are coming out in 2026 as well. So it feels like there's going to be a lot of first-party Nintendo support going into 2026, which also, based on the rumor that we talked about last week, with Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition getting a 60 frames per second mode. A lot of the games that they've already announced, I'm sure, will have some kind of performance improvement when they go into the Switch 2. So it feels like kind of a storm of like, Nintendo's not going to stop making games for the Switch 1. Those games will run better on Switch 2. And also, they're hoping that third-party games will kind of be the rising tide that raises all ships. But I think that Nintendo is playing a lot more closer to the vest. I think they have a lot more first-party stuff. We know that they have a lot on the shelf. They have a tendency to finish games, then not release them for years and years and years. I would suspect that they will have a steady cadence of first-party games throughout the next year, and not just like an all-in-one for the launch. Hope to God that they buy a Switch 2, and then hope for the best until October or November. That feels like not a real strategy.
I wish I had a better feel for how the Switch 1 rolled out to third-party developers, because my guess is that those June dates that were mentioned in the article about the dev kits going out, is that's like a second wave of dev kits that, as you said, Brendon, people have them already. And perhaps June is in fact earlier in the timeline than ever happened with the Switch 1. And then the idea is you're going to have this continuous momentum of first-party games at launch, along with some, trusted third partners. And then because these other developers who already know the specs will be getting their dev kits in early June, then they'll be ready by the fall, which may not have been, the case with the Switch 1, for instance.
Yeah.
I just find it hard to believe, like, to imagine that the Nintendo Switch 2 comes out and there's only like 5 Nintendo games on it at launch. Like I just find it sort of absurd to think about as a possibility that like you're gonna buy a Nintendo Switch, you go to the Nintendo Switch and you're like the Nintendo Switch 2 eShop, and you're like, okay, let me see what's in here beyond, I don't know, Metroid Prime or Wind Waker HD or Mario Kart 9, and there's nothing. Like I just find it so hard to believe that there's no third-party support at launch until the fall. So there must be some mix-up in here in terms of like communication and this report.
I think so. I wrote a piece on wavelengths about this specifically, but like I would assume that the mix-up probably happened because the kinds of people who write up these strategy documents internally at like large corporations all speak in executive speak that is confusing even to the people in the room who know what they're talking about. And I have to assume that something got lost in translation there, because like you said, Federico, it just doesn't make sense.
All right. We should talk about the Nintendo Direct.
We should.
Yeah.
So they showcased a whole bunch of games. I think, Brendon, you did you mentioned a reaction episode for Into the Aether where you talked about the games, I assume?
Yeah.
So
should be up by now. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously shout out to the new Metroid Prime 4 trailer, which looks incredible, and it's still Nintendo Switch 1 footage. We're all convinced that that's gonna be a cross-generation title, right? They're gonna show it.
Oh yeah, for sure,
okay.
for sure.
Yeah, they were cagey about the release date. They just said launching 2025, which implies to me, not giving a date on it specifically implies to me that they are trying to withhold the date because it's going to launch with the Switch 2.
Yeah. Tomodachi Life is back. After 12 years, Tomodachi Life is back.
Not a port, a new Tamadatchi Life also, which I am exhilarated by. I thought to be clear, this is a game that I heard about before the Nintendo Direct happened was going to be in this Nintendo Direct, but I didn't get information on if it was going to be a port or a remaster or like a new one. And I was like, fingers crossed that it would be a new one, and I'm so excited. And that trailer was so weird.
Yes.
It was so weird in a way that only Tamagotchi Life can be. Steven in our Into the Aether thing described it as Animal Crossing for the freaks, which I really loved. It's awesome. I'm excited about that.
We saw some more information about Pokemon Legends ZA, which I'm very excited about the game. I gotta say, I think so. I think it looks better than Scarlet and Violet, which is not a high bar.
Not hard.
It's not hard, but still, it's Game Freak and the Pokemon Company. You never know with these folks in terms of the Nintendo Switch 1. Still kind of skeptical about some of the changes compared to the original Pokemon Legends, like Arceus. I really want to see like setting the whole game inside of a city compared to like the open world aspect of Arceus. Like I'm still kind of skeptical about that. I don't know how much variety they can add with the wild zones. Is that what they're calling like the wild?
Right, because the wild zones are still just like in the city. And considering so much, and considering so much of Arceus was about the idea of like finding harmony with nature and finding harmony with Pokemon, because Pokemon are still scary. The Pokedex didn't exist yet. Like that fear of the unknown was a big piece of what made Arceus, I think, interesting from like a narrative perspective. And I don't know. I don't feel it as much here.
But maybe there is a meta political message in Legends CA, which is the fear of urbanization. And so that's why you're going into the wild zones to reconnect with nature.
And corporations, which like, it was so funny. I forget what the name of the corporation was, but as soon as they announced it, everyone in the TWG Discord chat was like, I wonder if the corporation is actually evil.
So a whole bunch of games, but I do want to talk about some of the other tech-related aspects of the Nintendo Direct. Starting with the most possible Nintendo thing that they've ever announced in the
friend codes all over again.
Virtual game cards.
Wait, can I start with how Nintendo started, which is we have an update for you about digital games.
Yes,
was how they started talking about it, and I was like, oh my God, are they going to get rid of them?
I was like, oh no, what's happening?
Yeah, are they so afraid of digital games and emulation that they're just not going to have digital games anymore on the Switch too?
And initially, when they said that in the video, my brain immediately connected the dots, and I was reminded of remember 10 years ago when Sony blasted Microsoft with the video showing like, here's how you land a game on a PS4. Yes. They were just exchanging a disc between two people. But that's basically what Nintendo announced in a way.
That's kind of what it is. Yeah.
So Brendon, what is a virtual game card?
Okay, so basically what they showed off was like, hey, you know how easy it is to have a physical version of a game and have it in one Nintendo Switch and then eject it and then put it in another Nintendo Switch? Isn't that awesome?
They literally said that. They
literally showed that off. They were like, but what about your digital games? Wouldn't it be so great if you could also eject your digital games just like you do with your physical ones, and give them to another Nintendo Switch? So basically what they announced was this idea of virtual game cards, which is an update coming in late April, which is going to enable you to have multiple Switches linked together, like the accounts linked together. And you can then eject a virtual game card and then put it in the other Nintendo Switch, all digitally, and then continue playing it there, which interesting concept, or I guess interesting rebranding of just the idea of being able to share your games. And it feels, as I said at the beginning, very like friend coded. Like it feels very much like this is a thing that should be very easy and is very easy on every other platform, but hasn't been on Nintendo. John, I know you have struggled with this in the past in terms of what is it? What is it even called now?
It's like primary switch and secondary switch.
You have to like name a primary switch and name a secondary. It's just like super complex. It doesn't make sense.
And I got into this position earlier this year or earlier last year where I let it all has to do with how you connect those to the internet. And you need to be the primary to be able to have access to everything away from your home network. And so I made my son the primary. And then he went off to do an internship and left his Nintendo Switch at school turned off. And I couldn't access any games for a long time.
Oh my God.
It was just awful. It was like all kinds of edge cases like that that were a real big problem. This seems like it solves some of that.
Yeah, they won't solve all of that, notably, I think. But it will definitely solve some of it. I think the most interesting thing that they announced, though, with the virtual game cards is the ability to share with your family group, which I think would help this a little bit.
Right.
Which is, if you have a family group, which can be up to 8 people, I think it might be 10, but it also might be 8. Up to 8 or 10 people in your family group on your Nintendo Online account, you can share your games with those people by just like tapping the game and saying who you want to share it to in your family group, which is very interesting. The only hitch here is that you can only do it for 2 weeks at a time. I don't know if that means like 2 weeks is up, they lose access to the game. You could just re-up it again immediately. I hope that that's the case, but I'm wondering if there's some kind of like hold on it where it's like, you just did this, you can't do this again. That's my fear.
I hope that both Switches don't have to be on the same network to do this too.
They do. For the initial sharing, they mentioned that you gotta be on the same local Wi-Fi network.
Oh, well, that's pretty much.
I don't know about the family group one. I wonder if that also needs to be on the same
That's the thing, is that
network.
my family group is all over the place.
But that's very much like what Netflix does, right? With like you need to be in this household to be able to use this Netflix account if you're on a family plan.
Which is what I wanted to mention. Like, it seems to me like, let's start from the beginning. So we're still talking about digital files, right? We're talking about files. Like a game is a file. It's not like it's gonna be like a different thing. It's a digital item in your storage. What they're doing is they kind of want to blend the limitations of physical media with the aspects of digital files. And a file can be anywhere. And so Nintendo is basically saying, but what if a digital file could be as convenient as a physical game card? Which it's kind of confusing to think about, because you're like, well, but a digital file, like, it doesn't have the limitations of physical media. It seems to me like Nintendo wants, on one hand, simplify the idea of like, so you have kids, you buy the game, you don't have to tell your kid, log in with dad's account if you want to play this game. I'm going to give you this game I'm going to buy the game and I'm going to lend you the game for 2 weeks. Like that entire flow, especially for young kids who still live at home, I think it sounds nice. My problem is that it seems like sort of the other side of the coin is that it's a very Nintendo way to go against the practice of account sharing, which folks have been doing with Spotify. I have groups of friends who have been sharing the same Netflix and Spotify subscription for like 10 years. And now all these companies, they're going up against it because obviously that's less money to the company, And it seems like this is a very Nintendo way to say, we don't want you to be sharing the same account, so we're introducing virtual game cards. And I have so many questions about that. Like, for example, let's say that I buy the new Super Mario, and I lend the game to my kid for 2 weeks. And the kid plays Super Mario for 2 weeks, and they get they get into the game, they play for 20 hours or something, and then the 2 weeks are up. What happens then? Like, first, can I re-land the game, and also what happens to the progress in that game for my kid's account? Like, what's happening there? So, still a lot of questions, but to me, this feels like a nice way to simplify account sharing inside of a family, but like. We've been able to re-download the same game on multiple consoles with the same account for ages. Like, imagine if Apple or Google did this, and they're like, what if your apps from the App Store were introducing virtual app CDs? And remember when software used to come on a disc, and now we're with a virtual app disc. What if it was, using an app was as easy as ejecting the CD from your computer and putting it inside another? You'd be like, wait, what? Like,
you know what this is like, Federico? This is just like what public libraries do in the United States with apps like Libby, with downloadable ebooks. This is exactly how that works. A library has an allotment of ebooks, even though it's just a file.
Oh, that's a good point.
They maybe have 5 copies or 10 copies for their license. And once those are all lent out to customers, you have to wait till somebody checks it back in and you have another slot open up. It's a lot like that, I think.
It reminds me too of like how Adobe handles licenses as well. So like if you have a Photoshop license or something, you can only have it active on 3 machines at a time, which for me, somebody who uses it for work and then also across a bunch of devices, like I'm constantly logging out of one computer so I can log into another one. And it's like, if I can do it anyway and it's just annoying, then why is this even a step?
Yeah.
My other theory is that I'm thinking about the Switch 2, and I'm wondering if maybe this is like reading between the lines, if this is a way for Nintendo to avoid the potential issue of what people like us are gonna do, which is, let me fire up Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch 1, and let me also fire up Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch 2. I want to see how they compare. And you're playing the same game with the same account, and maybe Nintendo is afraid that something bad is going to happen with their cloud saves across multiple generations of consoles. And so they're like, no, you got to eject the virtual game card from the Nintendo Switch 1 before you can test the same game on the Nintendo Switch 2.
So you don't corrupt your files.
Yeah. I mean, because
it does feel like this is the kind of thing you duct tape onto the Switch 1 to better serve whatever solve they have in the UI and the back end for Switch 2 as well. Like this is a public facing way of being like, the Switch 2 will be better at this. The Switch 1 will never be that much better at this, and this is our fix.
Yeah, I think there's a multiplayer aspect to this too, because what they don't want is they don't want to set up a sharing process where everybody can be running the same copy of a game in a multiplayer situation. What Nintendo wants is they want to sell each of those people a different copy so they can play their multiplayer games.
It's a far cry from the Game Boy Advance era where you could have one person with the game and then just plug in a link cable.
Shout out to the link cable, always.
Shout out to the link
for
cable.
sure.
We should also talk about Nintendo Today, which is the name of a new mobile application that you can get on your phone today, or when you listen to this or watching this, since a few days ago. So
it's adorable.
It's nice. It's cute. So it's a new app that allows you to keep up with Nintendo. They brought out Miyamoto-san to announce Nintendo Today. So what they're saying is, we're gonna keep doing the Nintendo Direct presentations, but we also have a space on your phone where you can log in and you can see the latest Nintendo announcements, the latest Nintendo news. It's basically a nicer way to keep up with Nintendo that is not going on X.com, the Everything app, and follow Nintendo of America or Nintendo of Japan or Nintendo Europe. Like, you can just get the app and you can see there's a calendar that shows you like which events are coming up or potentially which games are launching, I suppose. You can enable notifications. You can go in. There's going to be like right now you can sort of choose like your main character for the UI. There's a giant Luigi, for example, now in the app for me. I think it's nice. I think it's cute. I think it's a nice idea. There's obviously like it's kind of empty right now, but
it's all first party stuff right now.
It's all first party stuff. I think I don't know if this has the same potential as Nintendo Music, which I continue to believe that Nintendo Music has to be one of the best mobile apps they've ever done.
Totally agree. Yeah.
But still nicer than having to follow Nintendo of America on Twitter. So I'll take it.
I've been messing around with this. I have been listening, but I have also been messing around with this while we've been talking. Some interesting stuff in here. First of all, I love, so you open it up and it asks you like, what game do you like the best? And then that becomes the one that like kind of skins the whole app, which is nice. So I have it as Animal Crossing. But this second tab here is a calendar that has a bunch of stuff on it. So like right now it has the Nintendo Direct, on here because that's the Nintendo Direct that happened today. But you can go into the settings and there's a section called Calendar where you can say like what Nintendo stuff specifically you're interested in, including in-game events. So like you can go to Animal Crossing New Horizons, for example, and say like, I want information about Animal Crossing New Horizons. So like if I come into the app and I go to April 1st, it says that it's the beginning of like the Cherry Blossom Festival in Animal Crossing New Horizons, which is cool. And you can get different kinds of updates for different kinds of games. Like it's also showing me that today a bunch of new games are getting added to Nintendo Online in the Super Nintendo section, which is cool. So honestly, like if Miyamoto is telling the truth, which I imagine he is, and this is going to be a like information delivery system also, it's gonna be very interesting to start to get notifications from this app and just start to see what they have. They also just have some like other cute stuff for all the different series. So like I obviously said I was interested in every single series because I am legitimately, but like they have some Splatoon stuff. They have some like Fire Emblem concept art that's popping up here. They have like a motion comic featuring Pikmin in here. They just have like a bunch of cute stuff. And they also, maybe most importantly, have a widget that you can get as well.
Nice.
Which is wonderful.
Got a bunch of Mario short movies, it looks like, and some concept art for Metroid Dread.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it. I
love the giant widget with Zelda and the Oh, this is nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. The design is fantastic. It's very It's very Nintendo. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a great idea from strictly even a marketing standpoint, keeping the company in people's faces where they are all the time, which is on their phones. It's a reminder that there are these games and new things are coming out all the time.
Yeah, this was a big talking point of mine when Alarmo came out specifically, was like Nintendo is not content with just being the video game company anymore. They and the three of us have talked about this on and off the show a bunch, but like they want to be Apple, they want to be Google. They want to be that size company. And that's why you see them, branching off into filmmaking. It's why they're branching off into theme parks. It's why they're making things that are unrelated to gaming technically, but incorporate all of their IP, like a calendar app or a music app or an alarm clock. Like they want to be a lifestyle brand in the same way every giant major corporation wants to be a lifestyle brand. So you were never not thinking about Nintendo.
Yeah, kind of a combination between Disney and Apple, I would say, almost in terms of the way it's kind of set up. Yeah.
And they are better positioned to accomplish that than Apple is, at least,
Oh, yeah.
I would buy a Nintendo phone.
Dude, I would also buy a Nintendo phone. I would.
Yeah. So,
I don't know who I'm pointing at, but I'm pointing at somebody.
You're probably pointing at Miyamoto.
On that note, I think that about does it for this week's episode. John, can you take us home, please?
Yes, indeed. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of NPC Next Portable Console. You can find Brendon Bigley over at wavelengths.online. You can find Federico and me at macstories.net. All three of us are on social media too. Just search for our names in your favorite social media app. Talk to you later, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.